right, shalom, and welcome to the Unexpected Cosmology. You guys all know me. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. I am the main writer here in these parts. Tonight, as promised, we will be dealing with the Millennial Kingdom and mud flood. And the people have spoken, and I'm a man of the people. And so my hope is from this point forward, really, going through Thursday nights, that we will be dealing exclusively with Millennial Kingdom plus mud flood literature or research. And there is so much out there. I mean, it's being talked about everywhere, whether people realize it or not. A lot of people are talking about the Millennial Kingdom. But I will be, of course, dealing with it from a scriptural viewpoint, but also just through photos, through art, through historical, all different avenues. Tonight, we will be talking about the Renaissance a little bit, and as well as the Medici family. And I actually wrote this kind of by accident. I was writing an article on statues, and I was just really interested in these different kind of statues that seem impossible to make with the hand and a chisel. And you guys know obviously where I'm going with that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to write like a page just on Michelangelo and David. I'll just do like a little thing in here because I want to cover all these different artists who made statues. And then it turned into this like 30-page article, which, kind of, they run away from me often, but there's just so much information. Now, a lot of you out there have done a lot of information, a lot of research on Michelangelo, a lot of research on the Medici family. I cannot possibly cover every avenue. People come to me all the time and say, Noel, have you heard about, this YouTube channel? You should go watch that. And then I'll go watch and it's the same thing I already covered. A lot of times people have their choice YouTube provider, whatever. Again, I can't cover it all, but hopefully we can delve in tonight. And I want to encourage and foster more discussion afterwards, particularly as we're talking about the mud flood, because there's so many different angles to this. Everyone has done research in different areas. Please bring pictures. You can drop them in and we can discuss it. And specifically tonight, I want to, try to have some conversation afterwards on the Renaissance. I always want to say the Reformation. I have to stop myself. We're not talking about the Reformation. We can talk about the Reformation, but we're talking about the Renaissance and what was really going on there and how it was inverted. Now, just to give you guys, I'll be talking about in this paper. Please pull it up now. If you haven't already, I've dropped it in the chat. It has a lot of pretty pictures in it, so you can listen and you'll still hear what I'm talking about, but the pictures will help guide a lot of stuff. I had a point, now I forgot what it was, but a few months back I did a video called Millennial Kingdom plus Mud Flood and the Wastelands of the Seraphim, and that was a really helpful article for me because I was struggling trying to understand why, if the Millennial Kingdom did happen, why is there so much pagan art out there? Why is there so much beautiful, amazingly technical pagan art? That doesn't make any sense. And that article for me, when I started looking at all the different scripture passages, I was able to pull them together. It's like, no, it does make sense. It does make sense that art has always been a tool used by Intel to crash down societies. They're doing it today, but they were doing it then too. And so that's kind of the precursor to this. So anyone, if anyone's watching this in YouTube land and you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, that's a good one to go back and watch. So let's pull this up and let's get started on this right away. And I had it, but I just lost it. That always happens to me every single time. So now I need to go pull it up again. I need to go scroll all the way up here. There's a lot of people arriving tonight. Welcome, everybody. I'm not going to be able to obviously get all your names because I'll be reading. Here we go. Okay, this is called Michelangelo, the Divine One. By Noel Joshua Hadley, yours truly. Sometimes I lay awake in bed at night thinking about Michelangelo and wondering how many pecks at the chisel it took before the Roman Catholic Church designated him a master builder. I mean, you figure the young apprentice took a crisp bite to the nose, perhaps shaved a little too much off the right nip, and at other times circumcised the penis in whole before finally getting it right. Marble slabs of stone, such as David, don't form abs like that overnight. Or do they? Given the official narrative, you would expect imperfection. But we are never shown that version of Michelangelo at work. It is only ever the divine one who is exhibited. FYI, his immortality was another part of the thought process. That is, while lying awake in bed one night, I was trying to come up with a proper title should I go ahead and write this paper, which I did, obviously. Michelangelo, the Divine One, is not an attempt on my part to sound clever. I didn't even come up with the name. It's more of an unanswered question, which I hope somebody out there on the motionless plane might attempt to answer. Why in the world did Michelangelo's contemporaries call him a god among men? And by contemporaries, I mean to say he was known by that during his lifetime, the Divine One. Here's a quote from the boys down at the Intel department. Most people just know it as Wikipedia. In his lifetime, Michelangelo was often called Il Divino, the Divine One. See what I mean? You probably didn't believe me, but there it is in print. The RCC decided to skip right over saint and grant him immortal status, it seems. The same paragraph informs us how subsequent artists were inspired with what Michelangelo could turn out via a chisel driven by his burp or fart, but the attempts were short-lived. That's just another way of saying very few people were afterwards capable of accomplishing his enormous feats. Show me someone who can duplicate Michelangelo's impassioned, highly personal style, quote unquote, today, and with the tools we are told he was given to work with. Even more importantly, why don't we? Here's another quote from the same article. Despite holding a low opinion of painting, he also created two of the most influential frescoes in the history of Western art, the scenes from Genesis on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome and the Last Judgment on its altar wall. In recap, Michelangelo holds a low opinion of painting and yet devotes the sunset years of his life to the Sistine Chapel. How adorable. Now they're just getting snooty. Apparently, painting ceilings was below him. Haha, that was a joke. Let's go with that. I've got all sorts of Jungle Cruise jokes tonight. If Michelangelo's narrative as a human is in any way legitimate, then it would only make sense that somewhere in the world there's a graveyard with hideous and disfigured statues, void of all 10 toes, a single nose, or the right size plonker, all needing exhumed. Or perhaps each buttock didn't line up quite right from time to time. All failed attempts by the rookie stonecutter. History is simply content attributing Michelangelo to some of the greatest masterpieces of the Millennial Kingdom, scratch that, Renaissance, and then leaving us to the illusion. But did Michelangelo ever really exist at all? Questions like that are just aching for trouble. You will ask me who painted the Sistine Chapel, if not for Michelangelo. Simple. Somebody painted it, and then we are told it was Michelangelo. Whether or not somebody painted it with the actual name Michelangelo will never be known. I checked. Michelangelo only signed one piece of work. Wouldn't you like to know which one? We'll get to that. For now, you will just have to be content knowing that I'm going with the Divine One for a title and sticking to it. And seeing as how I've listed the current entry under my Millennial Kingdom plus Mud Flood banner, some of you know precisely where my thought process is taking us. Allow me to bring more clarity while still maintaining a level of vagueness. The current paper is a direct follow-up to this one, Millennial Kingdom plus Mud Flood and the Wastelands of the Seraphim. And there's, of course, a link there. Hopefully it works. Did you read it yet? Yes or no? If not, I'll wait. You'll be sorry you didn't. Or better yet, I'll assume you've given it a read and carry onwards, even though assumption is a troublesome thing. People make snark remarks all the time, thinking they've pulled the curtain so far back as to reveal the peripheral vision that myself and others are offering, when in fact they haven't even taken the time to follow the breadcrumbs which have led us here. And I'm like, come at me, bro. Those of you who have read the conveniently linked article may still be curious as to the direction I'm taking us. If so, then know this. The Millennial Kingdom eventually came to an end via decay from within. Satan may have been imprisoned, but man was still given the opportunity to sin, to learn from the unclean spirits in the wastelands and choose deception. And just like the decay of civilization today, art has always, art, excuse me, let me start that again. Art always has something to do with it. The man named Michelangelo played his part. Before delving too deep into this, I thought it best to document a screenshot from the article which Intel is pushing out. I'll be sure to add others as well, just in case the boys assigned to my workload read the latest and then decide to move the goalie net. It wouldn't be the first time the typewriter down at Langley pulled something like that off. Then again, seeing as how we're dealing with the same people who sponsor the Mandela effect, I'm not keeping my hopes up. After all, there are 2 or 3 Mandela effects accredited to Michelangelo. The creation of Adam and the horned statue of Moses are often disputed. If you're one of those who accredit the Vitruvian Man to Michelangelo rather than Leonardo, then there's your third. All 3 have reportedly changed. Anyways, the article says, very first sentence, that Michelangelo if I'm going to butcher his name, guys, I'm so sorry. Michelangelo di Ludovico Buonarroti Simoni. I need to say that with like my fingers, Simoni, was born on March 6, 1475. Jump a few paragraphs down, and we find a young 13-year-old Michelangelo working as an apprentice for somebody named Domenico Garlandio. Domenico Garlandio. Why 13? Because that's what the elite love to do. Deliver numbers under our noses. Watch digits fly in one ear and then out the other, and then sit around in a back room smoking stogies laughing about it. But we know better. What comes to mind but the 13 families of the Bavarian Illuminati? Another prominent date involved the Knights Templar hoax on Friday the 13th, 1307. There are, of course, the 13 stripes on the United States flag, as well as 13 colonies, not overlooking my old sparring partner, the 13th apostle. Lots of 13s to work with. On closer inspection, even the M in his name, Michelangelo, is the 13th letter of the alphabet. To the trained eye, his birthday is even more suspicious. 3/6/1475. What in the world? Do you see what I see? 3 plus 6 plus 75 adds up to 84, which screams Jesuit. Even his death date should raise antennas. 2/18/1564. 2 plus 18 plus 64 equals 84 again, making him 88 years old in total. Curiouser and curiouser, 88 adds up to blue blood, hinting even further at his true identity. That's technically how the story of his life is introduced to us. Michelangelo is a paid child standing under the unpainted ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which was also below him. Great things are about to happen. Mind you, Ghirlandaio is just the means by which the official narrative has him arriving at our consciousness. It is the Sistine Chapel where the trade-off happens. So here we read, Michelangelo was the first Western artist whose biography was published while he was alive. In fact, 2 biographies were published during his lifetime. By the way, stories were being written about him before his death. We are told a biography was never written about an artist before his death, and Michelangelo was successful in 2. That's propaganda right there. Roman propaganda, the best kind. Even assuming biographies were written about him during his lifetime, then we can know for certain that an initiative was underway. People were being lied to. The year was 1489 when Lorenzo de' Medici, de facto ruler of Florence, asked Ghirlandaio for his two greatest pupils. Michelangelo was offered among them. Wait a second. Lorenzo de' Medici, as in the House of Medici? I checked. Same house. Now I've just thought of something. These papers, after all, are a working process. So let's start over again and try this again with the second working title. This is legit, guys. I wrote this in order and I decided to rename this. So I'm now naming this Michelangelo, the Divine One, and the House of Medici. Let's try this again. There, that's better as titles go. The Divine One is inexplicably linked with the House of Medici, who, in turn, is linked in arms and playing the game of Red Rover with another anthropological people group altogether. I wonder who those people might be. Do you wonder? I happen to know. But before I spill the beans, I thought it might be a good idea to check in with the boys down in the local Internet mall and paw store to see if they offer the same insider's knowledge. I'm speaking, of course, about the Wikipedia. Turns out the House of Medici has its very own article. The first paragraph reads, as soon as I drink this, the House of Medici was an Italian banking family and political dynasty that first began to gather prominence under Cosimo di Medici and the Republic of Florence during the first half of the 15th century. The family originated in the Mugello region of Tuscany and prospered gradually until it was able to fund the Medici Bank. This bank was the largest in Europe during the 15th century, and it facilitated the Medici's rise to political power in Florence, although they officially remained citizens rather than monarchs until the 16th century. From the very get go, Intel wants you to know how neat banking is without daring to blow the lid off the entire population. The House of Medici was closely linked with Jews. You know, the same oppressed people group that owns the media and the banks. Amazing how we're already putting the pieces together. Of course, I don't want to assume. I decided to play a game of peekaboo with the Jewish virtual library just to see if they might deliver when the wiki held back. They delivered. Follow along. The fate of Tuscan Jewry in the early modern period was inextricably linked with the favor and the fortune of the House of Medici. Though a Jewish presence was registered in Lucca as early as the 9th century and a network of Jewish banks had spread throughout the region by the mid 15th, the organized Jewish communities of Florence, Siena, Pisa, and Livorno were political creations of the Medici rulers. And like the Medici Grand Dukedom itself, these communities took shape in the course of the 16th century. It says right here that the fate of Tuscan Jewry was inextricably linked to the favor and the fortune of the House of Medici. Tell me something I didn't know. Why don't you? We then read that the organized Jewish communities, quote unquote, were, quote, political creations of the Medici rulers, unquote. Organized Jewish communities, political creations, biographies being written. These are just another way of saying the Medicis are directly responsible for the design of Zionism from the ground floor, which again is another way of describing how the Edomites took over the earth. Getting back to the Wikipedia article. The Medici produced 4 popes of the Catholic Church. Pope Leo the 10th from 1513 to 1521, Pope Clement the 7th from 1523 to 1534, and the others as well. Pope Pius the 4th, Pope Leo the 11th, and 2 queens of France, Catherine de' Medici. Wow, it actually has the name Medici there, and Marie de' Medici. Huh, they both kept the names. Well, isn't that interesting? I know we haven't read that far ahead together as a group, but 2 of those popes are linked in arms with Michelangelo. I took the highlighter out on which ones too. Pope Leo X and Pope Clement VII. That's probably none of my business though. Reading on. The Medici's wealth and influence was initially derived from the textile trade guided by the Wool Guild of Florence. I guess that's Arte della Lana. Like other families ruling in Italian signori, the Medici dominated their city's government. were able to bring Florence under their family's power and created an environment in which art and humanism flourished. They and other families of Italy inspired the Italian Renaissance, such as the Visconti and um, I guess that would be Forza in Milan. I don't know if the S is whether the S or F is silent. The Este in Ferrara, the Borgia in Rome, and Gonzaga in Mantua. The Medicis inspired the Italian Renaissance. What, what they should have said is bankrolled the Renaissance. But even that is a lie, as the Millennial Kingdom didn't need bankrolled. I haven't gone about to prove this yet, but I feel somewhat certain at the moment, based upon what I've so far read and observed, that the monetary system was not in play while Yahusha ruled the world from Jerusalem, seeing as how Babylon was destroyed and all. What that tells us, if there is a smidgen of exoteric truth to the House of Medici backstory, is that Medici and friends were reinstituting the Cain lifestyle, but this time from within the cities of Elohim. Before moving on, I wanted to know who these friends were of the Medicis. A scrounging mission in the Matrix recovered the above coat of arms. Looking to your left, you'll see a picture of the Visconti coat of arms. If I'm not mistaken, a serpent is eating someone. They seem like nice people. The Sforza family fared little better. Their coat of arms displays the very phoenix whom we have earlier identified as the resurrected beast government. Read for yourself here at the Return of Rome. And just so you don't confuse the phoenix for a nice birdie, it's like a canary or sandpiper or something. I'm somewhat certain the serpent is still eating someone. Nothing to see here, I'm sure. Continuing. The Medici Bank, from when it was created in 1397 to its fall in 1494, was one of the most prosperous and respected institutions in Europe, and the Medici family was considered the wealthiest in Europe for a time. From this base, they acquired political power, initially in Florence and later in wider Italy and Europe. They were among the earliest businesses to use the general ledger system of accounting through the development of the double entry bookkeeping system for tracking credits and debits. So the Medici family may have fallen in 1494, but only in such a way that somebody takes one step back and then two forward. The Medicis were expelled from Florence when in fact they had already pressed their eyesight upon greater Europe. That's why it says they acquired political power initially in Florence and later in wider Italy and Europe. Also, depending on how we define wealth, wealth being monetary gain, then I suppose I could agree to the Medicis being the wealthiest. We are dealing in the decay of the Millennial Kingdom from without and within. So it's all in how you look at it. I'm willing to bet that Medici and his friends fell into bad standing with the management of Florence after having their agenda exposed. That much is obvious. I mean, the official narrative has them expelled, no? Must have not been favorable then to their brand of banking or sponsored art. The defining difference here is the framework that we're working with. Are we expected to believe ruling priests would put up with a financial takeover? It seems somebody had the sense to tell them, get the hell out of the kingdom and good riddance. Our controllers will never frame it like that, though. Michelangelo's earliest known works consist of two marble carvings, the Madonna of the Stairs and Battle of the Centaurs. One involves breastfeeding, and the other, well, you can try to figure it out for yourself. I'm still confused by what's going on. We are told they were sculpted between the years 1490 and 1492, both under the sponsorship of the Medicis, making him 17 at the time of their completion. Aren't centaurs supposed to be men with the legs and torsos of horses? Not seeing any centaurs here. Only a pileup of nude males. That's rather disturbing, knowing his reported age. I guess the Medicis knew how to bring them in and stack them up. But whatever, let's just go with it and try not to pull back too many curtains. They tell us these were Michelangelo's school project. Really, how adorable. Rule number one in any school assignment is to sign your name before handing it in to the teacher. Looks like Michelangelo failed miserably. I will be accused of moving the goalie net, but that's supposedly Michelangelo's work, and I don't buy it. Not the same person. You will tell me signatures are below an artist, as the work is his true signature. Oh, is it? Well, then take another careful look at the homoerotic wrestling match or centaur battle and tell me that's Michelangelo's signature. Exactly. You can't. If that's his signature, then he carved it with crayons. I'm not saying it's not a good carving. Better than most could do today after a lifetime of effort, I suppose. However, the only reason anyone looks at that and thinks Michelangelo is because our controllers have told us to attribute it to him. For all I know, it could have been Donatello or any of the other Ninja Turtles. It is the death of Lorenzo de' Medici on April 8th, 1492, which apparently prompted Michelangelo to leave the House of Medici behind him. Impeccable timing considering all that was about to go down, but we'll get to that in a moment. His absence only lasted for the matter of 2 years, when Piero de Lorenzo de' Medici commissioned him for some sort of snow statue. Still not sure what that is. In that rather short in-between period, the teenage Michelangelo apparently busied himself studying the anatomy of corpses in a local church hospital. That's how they explain the story of the wooden Jesus crucifix, which was gifted to the prior of the Florentine church of Santo Spirito as a thank you. I'm making a point to discuss the bodies in the morgue only because an artist needs models, and I'm still hoping somebody can explain to me where the Medicis pulled the people for his centaur's carving. Another creation during his short stint away from the Medicis is said to be a larger-than-life marble statue of Hercules, which subsequently went missing in the 18th century. Nice touch. The Cainites are remembering something which didn't survive the mud flood, attempting to make an inventory of lost artifacts, Or as Golem put it, or as Golem put it, my precious. Now, meanwhile, in 1492, Jews were being expelled from Spain, while simultaneously across the Atlantic pond, Columbus was discovering America, quote unquote. But even that is a ridiculous farce, knowing what we do of the kingdom. America was populated and, like Europe, thriving, with spectacular cathedrals to match. It's why I put sarcastic bunny ear quotations around discovering America, because Columbus did no such thing. The entire story is invented. There was no such person as Columbus, but even if there was, he was probably just a ferryman, taking ticketed passengers back and forth, that sort of thing. In truth, he was a card-carrying Freemason and Knights Templar. The inventors of history wanted to honor their own. Who really knows? It's what I keep trying to get through to you, though. We have no way of knowing if Michelangelo accomplished what he said he did, as even the events surrounding his life are fabricated. Anyways, that may be Spanish history, but wouldn't you know it, Jews were also being expelled from Florence, Italy. And once again, the Jewish Virtual Library has the House of Medici closely linked with them. It says, in the 1490s, under the Catholic theocracy of Fra Girolamo, oh man, I butchered this, guys, Savonarola. You guys should see me ordering Italian food. It's awful. Both the Medici and the Jews were expelled from Florentine territory. When the Medicis returned to power in 1512, the Jewish ban fell into abeyance until their next expulsion of the Medici in 1527. In 1537, Cosimo di Medici seized definitive control of the Florentine government and recognized it as a princely state, the dukedom, later Grand Dukedom of Tuscany. This state flourished for 200 years under 7 successive Medici rulers: Cosimo I, Francisco I, Ferdinando I, Cosimo II, Ferdinando II, Cosimo III, and then Gian Gaston, or Gastoni, probably Gaston. Our Roman and Zionist controllers anticipate cognitive dissonance winning the 20th and 21st century intellect rather than common sense. They have already openly admitted that organized Jewish communities were political creations of the Medici rulers, and yet expect us to gawk with wonder at the cruelty of those who wouldn't put up with an obvious conspiracy to take over the world, as if this were simply a racial issue. A success so far. Holocaust guilt is a headache. To say the Medicis and the Jews were simply attempting to elevate us out of the Dark Ages and finance art is doublespeak. The writers of Illuminati-sponsored history books are putting forward a language which deliberately obscures, disguises, and reverses the meaning of words. That's what doublespeak is. We are furthermore told the Medicis were not only successful in returning, but becoming a succession of rulers. Go big or go home, I guess. The fact that the state flourished for 200 years and under 7 Medicis, no less, is more Orwellian doublespeak, when in fact the kingdom was being oppressed and it was the righteous who were being persecuted. With his return to the sponsorship, Michelangelo quickly transitioned to 2 of his most iconic pieces. The Pieta was started and finished between 1498 and 1499, whereas the statue of David was completed in 1504. Again, he was born on March 6, 1475. If I'm doing the math right, Michelangelo would have been only 24 years old when completing the Pieta. Seriously, have you seen what graduate students are turning out nowadays? Only 7 years have passed between the primitive portrait of the breastfeeding mother and the crucified Christ in her arms. The morgue paid off, apparently. We are shown no failures in between. Oh, and by the way, if you were sitting on the edge of your seat wondering which piece of art was inscribed with Michelangelo's name, it was this one. The Wikipedia even says so. It is the only piece Michelangelo ever signed. That's it. Pieta is the only known piece from a certain somebody whom we've all come to know as Michelangelo. There is no other. I'll go ahead and say it. If the real Michelangelo is indeed Michael or Michael from Scripture, then Pieta is made by the archangel. Every other painting or statue is simply attributed to him, including David, which pits him as only 29 years of age at its completion. This is what Wikipedia says. He sculpted 2 of his best-known works, the Pieta and David, before the age of 30. Ridiculous, especially knowing the hyped-up narrative of its creation by the guiding hands of a mortal. The following origin story derives from Opera Magazine and reads, since the mid-15th century, a gigantic block of white marble was lying in the yard of the Opera de Santa Maria del Fiore. Agostino di Duccio, a sculptor pupil of Donatello, had bought it and had begun to sculpt it to depict a colossal King David to be placed on an external buttress of the cathedral. But before he could complete his work, he lost the commission, and the large marble, only roughly sketched in order to depict a standing man, remained unfinished. Another great sculptor, Antonio Rossellino, also tried to complete the sculpture, but without success. This marble was now known as the Giant, a fragile giant because apparently the marble had been ruined by rainwater. Michelangelo, who was just 26 years old in 1501, fell in love with it and was allowed by the opera to complete it. He carved it in one of the courtyards of the opera, where today is the Cathedral Museum. What a wonder would it be to admire the young genius at work on that colossus. Michelangelo was 26 when he took over chisel duties. Again, ridiculous. Try to recall what you were up to at 26 years of age. Probably telling somebody to hold your beer moments before taking a van to the hospital. I was still off in the desert attempting to find myself. You will ask me what's ridiculous about the David story, as Michelangelo was a freaking genius or whatever, and all the history books agree on that fact. All they're really telling us is that nobody else could cut David from a solid granite stone, not even Donatello's pupil. So don't even try, because even if you did, it couldn't be done. Another way of saying this is David wasn't cut with a chisel. That's another conversation, though. At present, it's the stage he's standing upon that I take issue with. Santa Maria del Fiore. Even its origins are concocted, which tells me that the Medici's players are likewise invented, or at best stage actors. The Wikipedia continues. The Medici family have claimed to have funded the invention of the piano and opera, financed the construction of St. Peter's Basilica and Santa Maria del Fiore, and were patrons of uh, Brunelleschi. This is, I'm getting butchered here with these names tonight. I do not speak Italian. Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, recognize that one. Michelangelo, Raphael, hey, it's the Ninja Turtles. Uh, Machiavelli, Galileo, and Francesco Redi, among many others in the arts and sciences. They were also protagonists of the Counter-Reformation from the beginning of the Reformation through the Council of Trent and the French Wars of Religion. Lies and more lies. The Medici family makes many claims, it seems, and not even the spooks clapping their wiki article are willing to commit to the narrative. They had me at the invention of the piano and the opera, but then went too far when fingering themselves as responsible for St. Peter's Basilica and Santa Maria del Fiore. Nope, not having it. If you think mere mortals built those structures with horse and buggy, then we need to have a talk. Those are millennial structures just as assuredly as the harpsichord and vocals complemented the music of the kingdom. Perhaps the Medici family did invent the piano and opera, but only as a corruption of the harpsichord and organ and the chamber music which often accompanied them. I'm not even going to buy that, though. And speaking of lies, Michelangelo the Divine's human story plays its part at both locations, St. Peter's Basilica and Santa Maria. Here is what we read regarding Michelangelo's relationship with St. Peter's. At the age of 74, he succeeded Antonio di Sangallo the Younger as the architect of St. Peter's Basilica. He transformed the plan so that the western end was finished to his design, as was the dome, with some modification after his death. Michelangelo is the architect of St. Peter's Basilica, and that's bunk. Even more ridiculous is their attributing him to its dome. How does one even go about designing a dome? Michelangelo had no prior dome experience, but that doesn't matter, since the narrative of Michelangelo plays out like a Darwinian chart, imagining the chimp advancing towards the first generation of Homo erectus and beyond. Like everything else in his life story, we are told he simply envisioned it and then had it built. All we are given are stories, though. How each was accomplished is never told. Case in point, when it comes to human feats of the Millennial Kingdom, scratch that, Age of Enlightenment, they can invent all the personal stories they want. What they are often incapable of telling you, however, is how they did it. The Cathedral of Florence is yet another technological marvel of the old world order. In describing its origin, the official narrative once again undermines our intellect. Here's what the Wikipedia has to say about Santa Maria del Fiore. It was begun in 1296 in the Gothic style to a design of Arnolfo di Cambio and was structurally completed by 1436. And I I didn't comment on this, but I just thought of this now. Whenever they tell you that something is done in the neoclassical style or the Gothic style, what they're saying is that they're this building, they don't want to say that it was built during the Gothic style or the Roman period or whatever. It was based on that style. That's how they try to make their narrative work. The exterior of the basilica is faced with polychrome marble panels in various shades of green and pink, bordered by white, and has an elaborate 19th century Gothic revival. There it is again. It's Gothic revival. It wasn't built during the Gothic time, clearly. It was a revival. Facade by Emilio di Fabris. The cathedral complex in Piazza del Duomo includes the baptistry and Uh, all these words are just butchering me tonight. Gyros Campanelli. These three buildings are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, covering the historic center of Florence and are a major tourist attraction of Tuscany. The basilica is one of Italy's largest churches, and until the development of new structural materials in the modern era, the dome was the largest in the world. It remains the largest brick dome ever constructed. A nickel of advice. Whenever the UNESCO World Heritage Site sets its gaze upon another historical landmark, we might as well plant a red flag of our own. We'll need a whole lot of them, though. So many lies needing exposed. The idea is that the said location needs protected or preserved, which is why UNESCO is brought in. That's just a nice way of saying there is a certain narrative which needs protecting, not necessarily the true one, though. In past papers, we have seen UNESCO show up at Hiroshima, Auschwitz, and the Titanic's purported coordinates. They're all lies. I can only imagine UNESCO has gotten its paws upon Millennial Kingdom structures all over our realm. The narratives need preserved even more so than the bricks they've sworn to protect. UNESCO is just a side note, though. The bigger news can be found in the highlighted admission. Until the development of new structural materials in the modern era, the dome was the largest in the world. Bookmark that. The modern era is a post mudflood reference. That's what they're ultimately getting at. Like NASA's inability to send astronauts to the moon 50 years after the fact, post mudflood architects on horseback lost the technology to raise something like that. I mean, consider the claim which immediately follows. It remains the largest brick dome ever constructed. Bookmark that too. Carry those bookmarks around with you. Adding insult to injury, the official narrative tells us Filippo Brunelleschi was the designer of the dome. I take issue with that. Have you read his biography? I have. You probably have too. Let's give it another go anyhow. Refresh our memory. Filippo Brunelleschi, considered to be a founding father of Renaissance architecture, was an Italian architect, designer, and sculptor, and is now recognized to be the first modern engineer, planner, and sole construction supervisor. In 1421, Brunelleschi became the first person to receive a patent in the Western world. He is most famous for designing the dome of Florence Cathedral, a feat of engineering that had not been accomplished since antiquity, as well as the development of the mathematical technique of linear perspective in art, which governed pictorial depictions of space until the late 19th century and influenced the rise of modern science. His accomplishments also include other architectural works, sculptures, mathematics, engineering, and ship design. His principal surviving works can be found in Florence, Italy. What Wiki doesn't make a point of in their introduction is that Brunelleschi started out as a goldsmith and a watchmaker. That's not exactly a deal breaker. The fact that the dome which he imagined remains unmatched anywhere else in the world is. Its construction employed methods which architects don't even understand to this very day. How in the world is that even possible given a straightforward linear series of events? We are even told there was no central support system to hold the dome up during construction. To this very day, architects are baffled by the watchmaker. How are we even supposed to connect those pieces? We can't. The answer is they don't expect you to. We are flooded with personal stories and hopes that we will have no choice but to conclude them true. Oh, haven't you read? Michelangelo chiseled his masterpiece David under the shadow of Brunelleschi's dome. That proves everything. Never mind the fact that neither the dome nor the statue can be replicated. The people existed, and how are we to say otherwise? The narrative drones on and on and on from there. Did you know that Sir Christopher Wren was one of the most highly acclaimed English architects in history? It says so right here. Sir Christopher Wren was one of the most highly acclaimed English architects in history. He was also an anatomist, astronomer, geometer, and mathematician physicist, you know. His bio has him living from 1632 until 1723. Nice compass he's holding in the picture. Why is Wren important? Well, we're told he is the master builder of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Mind you, that's only one among the 52 churches which he is accredited with building in the same city after the Great Fire of 1666. I just found he built 52 churches after the fire of 1666, and he died in 1723. The dude kept busy. I'd be willing to bet they're all Millennial Kingdom buildings, every one of them. We're further told that the dome planted above St. Paul's was inspired by Michelangelo's dome. See how that works? It's their attempt at geological columns. London couldn't possibly have inspired Florence, you see, as the House of Medici pumped money into the Enlightenment first. And yet, for all I know, the people whom Michelangelo and Brunelleschi impersonated were inspired by Wren's dome. You figure somebody in the world built the first dome, but all we are given is a manufactured paper trail. Perhaps this guy is responsible for motivating everyone else. If he happened to be in league with the Millennial Saints, then who is to say he wasn't? His name is William Thornton. His bio has him born in 1759, dead by 1828. The timetable is a century removed from the Renaissance, but that is only to throw you off their scent. Thornton is accredited with designing the United States Capitol building, and you'll never guess. But its dome was inspired by Michelangelo. How do you even go about building a dome like that? Ask the Pilgrims and Cowboys, I guess. It's like my grandmother always said, they don't build things like they used to, which is true. It probably has something to do with the fact that humanity's grandest achievements were in fact accomplished by the resurrected sainthood. All right, guys, thanks for listening in. That was my latest attempt to try to unravel this whole thing. And I'll have to admit, that was a really frustrating, hopefully it wasn't frustrating for you guys to listen to. That was really frustrating paper for me to write, and try to just look at all that and figure out, is any of that true? What are they telling us on an exoteric or an esoteric perspective? And what are your guys' thoughts? Anyone have any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I'm liking the exploration as you go over these papers or documents or historical narratives. I think the more that we dig into it and expose or question ourselves with the history, I think we'll find more and more answers to what that narrative is or what's supposed to be. So I enjoyed it. I think that there's so much more to explore and dig into this. So, we'll see where it goes.
So let me kind of sum up what I think is happening here. And it's actually, Sean made a comment here, which is absolutely true. He said, it's funny how I don't even know how to pronounce that, but still know it was mispronounced. I am so sorry, guys, for butchering so many names. As I have stated before, when we were living in Europe, now keep in mind in Scotland, when we were like, we couldn't even understand, like they're speaking the English language and we're like, I can't even understand these people. Like my wife knew that like in Scotland, we could understand, there were times where I could understand maybe 20% of the language. It was that bad. I felt so out of touch with my own language. But when we were in France for 3 months, and it doesn't matter where we went. I couldn't even say bonjour correctly. It was awful. I'm terrible at pronouncing things. But as a writer, when you're writing this stuff down, you don't think about like how you think of a word in your head is very different than how it comes out. So apologies for all that. What I want to really go over is what I think is happening here. And we know that if the Millennial Kingdom happened, that obviously there was a rebellion from within. There were persecutors from within that were trying to go against what was happening, or maybe take the wealth of that kingdom, kind of steal it in a way, for their own purposes. And when we're looking at art, and I'll be talking more about this in upcoming weeks. Like, you guys have seen the pictures out there where they're making artwork that cannot be duplicated at all. Like, there is some phenomenal work out there. And so I do think that the resurrected saints and the righteous mortal men had a technology that they were making some great stuff. But somewhere along the way, that started becoming pagan. It started becoming corrupt. It started becoming very, sexual and just really wicked. I mean, there's some messed up stuff in Baroque art and Renaissance art. And the way I describe this is that there were influences outside the kingdom, fallen angels, seraphim, demons, all sorts of stuff, unclean spirits that were living in the wastelands of Babylon, that people were going out and they were learning from them. They would have brought that back in. And I kind of suspect that the Medici storyline has some merit to it, that there was a conspiracy. I mean, even within the official narrative, you see a conspiracy there. They are teaming up with the Jewish people. I think the Ashkenazi. They're teaming up with them and pushing, organized political power and all sorts of stuff, and they're getting booted out for it. And they teach us in history class, it was so terrible how they booted them out. Well, it's like, well, wait a second here. They were undermining the kingdom. Even according to the official narrative, they were undermining it. And of course, the kings and the popes and others will be like, "Yeah, you're out of here, dude. Like, we're not putting up with this stuff." And you see, like, where we've come with the Federal Reserve and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting. Who said in here? Maybe it was Sean again. Oh no, Brian. You said, "I'm thinking the Medicis could be related to the Rothschilds now." That could very well be true. I didn't even think about that. That's very fascinating. It could be any one of those families, but yeah, definitely the Rothschilds. And so now, in terms of Michelangelo, it is really interesting that he's called the Divine One. I didn't really address that because I didn't know. Like, I started out the paper thinking I'm going to address it, and I didn't really know where to go with it. I don't know if Michelangelo existed, but I don't know if it's just like an esoteric language that they're talking about. The type of people that were making this artwork. I don't know. Maybe he was like a some sort of fallen being, deity, for all I know. That they were praising the wrong kind of Elohim type of divine creatures. There's so many places we can go with this. But here's what we do know. We know that all these structures and all this artwork cannot be replicated. I love that, Rob, you dropped in the marble sculpture. They say it's 19th century, like early 1800s, but I'm calling they do that to mask this. Like, that bust of the I think it's called the Virgin, like the Weeping Virgin or something like that. And you could see you could see her face underneath the veil, but it's one piece of marble. I mean, that's amazing stuff that can be done with a 3D printer today. But there is nobody who can show us personally how it's done with a hand and a chisel. Like, that's not happening. So, yeah, and yeah, I had made that little comment in here. Some people have speculated that Michelangelo could have been the Archangel Michael. If so, then I'm calling lies on this, because there's no way that. I mean, Michelangelo would not have Michael the Archangel if he was actually making art, which is possible. Maybe angels really do. I don't know. I don't think he was doing some of the stuff that they say Michelangelo was doing. I don't really know. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My name is Ronit, and this is the first time that I'm joining you. So I have a question. I listened to your talk from last week, And one of the things that bother me is the generic reference that you make when you talk about Jews. So I was born in Israel, and I am a believer in Jesus. But it really bothers me when people generically refer to Jews. So, for example, in your talk this evening, you kept saying the Medicis, and then you said the Jews. You didn't say the Italians
Right.
and the Jews, right? So why wouldn't you just refer to certain families? Because when you refer to Jews in general, it's like all of us are evil and all of us are conspiring, and it's not true. I can tell you right now, most of the people in Israel are completely ignorant of all of this. They just don't know they are victims as much as all of us.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate that. The article that I was reading tonight, when I was talking about the Jews, I was actually reading from quotes from the Jewish Virtual Library, and there may have been some from Wikipedia, not as much there. But it was the Jewish Virtual Library which was talking about how the Medicis were, and I could go back and quote them again for you, but of course we can just rewind this video or read the PDF. That they were actually they were funneling money into what we call the Renaissance. I always want to say the Reformation, but the Renaissance, and that they were putting the Jews in political power, and that the Jews were being cast out by the power already in Italy. So that was happening. There was a conspiracy where the Medicis were teaming up with the Jewish people to put a foothold and control. And that's, I don't know, we could deny that, but that's even what the official narrative actually says. Now, what happened is because I was raised in school, learning about how during 1492 in Spain, how the Jews were being kicked out of Spain in 1492, and they were comparing that with the Holocaust and how terrible this was, but no one had ever stopped to ask the question, well, why were they being kicked out? We were taught that they were kicked out because people hated Jewish people, when in fact these articles by the Jewish Virtual Library and others will attest to the fact that it was a political scheme. They were attempting to, they were bringing in these banks, they were putting people into debt, they were doing all sorts of things to gain control. So that's official history.
Yeah, but that's not all the Jews. My point is that it's a very small group of Jews that introduced that banking system, and all of us are suffering from it. The other 99% of the Jews, plus everyone else on earth. That's the whole point I'm trying to say. So just kind of like I think that it creates antagonism toward Jews in general when most of us are suffering, no matter who we are, because of a few families.
Well, okay, this is a difficult conversation to have. Let me just say, number one, I want to let you know that I believe the Bible is true. Okay, I'm what we call Torah pursuant. I believe that Torah is Yahuwah's instructions in righteousness. I further believe that there are 12 tribes, really technically 13. Yehuda is just one of the 12 or the 13 tribes. Okay, you have Issachar, you have Zebulun, you have Reuben, you have Benjamin, you have, you just go down the list. The Levites, right? Yeah. The problem is that the Ashkenazi, so typically, if I'm going to refer to the tribe from the Bible, I will refer to Yehuda. Okay, I'm specifically referring to those people. All right, so Yehusha came from that tribe. All right, the problem is that in the 1800s, you see emerging very, very big in this post-mud flood narrative, the Ashkenazi Jews in Russia, that Black Sea region, all through there. All right. The Ashkenazi are not historically the tribe of Yahudim. There are even Jewish historians who have put this down in writing, and they have shown that they're actually the Edomites. All right. Of course, I believe also the Romans were also historically Edomites as well. And it's really interesting that when the Bolshevik Revolution was happening in Russia, which became communist Russia, it was led by these Ashkenazi. I mean, the very word Ashkenazi tells me that they're not Semitic. But it was the Ashkenazi who came up with the anti-Semitism. They're saying, if you're saying we're not a Jew, you're anti-Semitic, which is kind of ironic because they're not Semitic. They're a different people group. But it's the Ashkenazi who created Zionism. They created the State of Israel. And you look at all what they've done. You can say they're a minority, but they run the music industry. They run Hollywood. They're behind the atomic bomb hoax. They're everywhere. Like, I just dig through the media, and they're just all throughout. Like, there is a actual conspiracy where they keep showing up over and over and over and over again. Now, one of my best friends is, well, he doesn't know whether he's from the tribe of Yehuda or not, but we all know who he is. One of my best friends is Jewish, okay? I have no problem with anyone from the tribe of Yehuda. I have no problem with an Edomite. But there is a spiritual truth that we see throughout Scripture that what brings Yahuwah's wrath in the end is the fact that the Edomites, and I wrote a paper on this, I could show you this, that the Edomites are coming into the land and taking it as their own possession. And it is when the Edomites do this that it brings forth his wrath. So I am not a supporter of the State of Israel. I believe that the State of Israel is all a part of the Great Deception. You look at the United Nations planting that, all the propaganda and the indoctrination around the Holocaust myth, the hoax. Let me just put it this way: if you're gonna gas people in a chamber, you don't put a wooden door on it. You don't put a wooden door with a glass window. That's like, I'm telling you right now, if I'm going to get gas in a chamber, I'm going to kick down that door. It's a wooden door with a glass, and nobody ever thought to do that. So I do have a lot of issues with the official narrative as it's pushed, and they are behind it. Now, keep in mind, it's there's all sorts of ethnic groups that cause all sorts of problems too, right? The British, the Romans, the Americans.
Yeah,
the Freemasons, the Jesuits,
the
Illuminati.
Yeah, but it's not. My point is that it's not all the Jewish people, okay? And so, by the way, I was born and raised in Israel, and I moved to the U.S. 30 years ago. So I consider myself American. And I don't come from Ashkenazi Jews. I come from the other type of Jews, the Sephardi, Spanish Jews. And just FYI, that in Israel historically, the Ashkenazi Jews look down at anyone that is not Ashkenazi, and they are very racist toward them. So I don't have a really good experience with Ashkenazi Jews myself. So that's just a side note. The only thing that I'm requesting is that everyone should keep open mind that most of us Jewish people were raised in complete ignorance. I'm learning myself a lot about the state of Israel and Zionism and Rothschild, So not all of us are part of this conspiracy.
Yeah, I don't advocate that just because someone comes from a certain background that they're part of the conspiracy. I'll just cover a couple of things and then maybe we can move on.
Yeah.
This last year, I've researched a lot on the serpent seed doctrine. I don't even know where you're at on that. All right. I find it really fascinating. And I believe, now just so you know, just so we're clear, not, nor have I ever said that the Edomites. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, actually, the Edomites do originate, but that the Jewish people or the Yahudim originate from serpent seed. Okay, that's not even my position. What I have found, what I do believe, is that there is a little race that comes from Cain that originates from Satan. That Satan is the father of Cain, and that this family spread to many different people groups. One of the things I found in my research that when you look at like the story of Abraham, when he met Pharaoh, or some of the other, like Eliezer, according to my research, Eliezer was a son of Nimrod, who is serpent seed. Pharaoh also was a son of Nimrod, who was serpent seed. Hagar, who is the father of Ishmael, was a granddaughter of Nimrod, serpent seed. And you see a lot of these different people groups in there that come from them. But the catch is that when they turn to Yahuwah, the Most High Elohim, and worship Him, they are no longer considered the seed of the serpent. They're considered the seed of Yah. And I have shown that time and again. I'm not concerned with what someone's origin is. Just so you know, I am not even convinced that the Yahudim, the Jewish people, are actually the Yahudim. I have no way of knowing that. Like, again, I don't want to come down on any of your beliefs and your heritage or anything like that. I have no way. For all I know, I'm Jewish. I don't know. I have no way of knowing. I could be Levite. I could be any of that stuff. And I think that this deception is so big in post mudflood, like all this genealogy, all things. I don't believe any of it. I don't even believe that the land of Israel is the historical land of Israel. I think that's how deep this goes. And so, I'm not trying to bring any despair to you, but what I would say is that my heritage is not Irish, it's not English, it's not French, it's not American. My heritage is the house of Israel, and my Father is in heaven, Yahuwah, the Most High Elohim. Okay, and I think that's where I find my identity, and I see people in two ways: either they're the seed of Abraham, they're the seed of Yahuwah, or they're the seed of Satan. It's either or. And so we get caught up in this, this villainizing, and I don't want to villainize any people group, but the fact remains, the Edomite takeover, the Ashkenazi are everywhere. They are. And I can't deny that. So again, I don't want to villainize anybody who is the seed of the Most High. If you're here worshiping Yahuwah and being obedient to Him, then you're House of Israel. So, all right, moving on. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. That was a really great talk, and I don't want you to feel, that was really bold, and I do appreciate that. So, was there anybody else who have anything else?
I have a question. Can you hear me all right now?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. In light of making carved idols, you see in scripture a lot first of all, you see wood. Like Jeremiah 10 specifically talks about carving it out of wood, and the gold and the silver. A lot of this stuff is stone, which seems to be a contrast to, first of all, the idols we see in scripture. But how do you, I don't know, I guess, where do you put this type of, these statues, these carvings? Could you actually see Michael creating this, and do you see that as an idol type thing that's being carved, or is that something different in your opinion?
Okay, that was really weird. I heard most of what you said. I was actually booted out, and I'm wondering if we've hit max capacity or something. And Hank was talking about that. So that's really weird. I got booted out. But what I think you were saying, Dave, is you were asking if Michelangelo could be Michael and that he would carve that. Is that what you're asking? And if so, I can't answer that question. I'm right there with you. I have no clue. I just threw it out there that that the thought occurred to me, and then I looked it up. I did a little search and go, oh, somebody else thought the same thing, that Michelangelo is possibly somehow related esoterically or exoterically to the Archangel Michael. It's worth considering. It's you had brought it up to me earlier, David. Dave was he like dropped me this video. It was like a couple months ago, but it was really awesome. And it was some guy. It was some Renaissance musician composer, like a choral chamber music guy. And Dave's like, dude, like look at this guy's name. I'm looking at him like, okay, what? He's like, it literally means John the Baptist. Like if you translate this, it means his name is John the Baptist. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I started listening to this guy. I'm like, I always imagined John the Baptist that if he were a actual composer, that he would make like really raw, edgy music, kind of like dark, moody, razor blade stuff. But it was like really like gentle and laid back, and I felt like I was floating on a river. And I'm like, man, if this is John the Baptist, I'm not sure if that's quite how I imagine it. But yeah, again, it's all speculation, right? I don't know. That's why I made the point that the only art piece that is actually identified signature by a guy named Michelangelo is the one with Mary holding the crucified Jesus. That's it. I have no way of knowing.
Yeah, so once again, with these examples you shared, especially with one particular artist, architect, sculpture, all these different arts that he's attributed to, like he did it all. That what we see in America, what we see all over the world with different type of, whether it was cathedrals or different type of architecture attributed to them, all being like, you see this narrative repeated, like somebody designing or building 50 cathedrals in 20 years or 50 years.
Yeah, that's
all over the place.
That's outlandishly ridiculous. I don't even know how they explain that.
So it's like this is what's interesting is that's the narrative. So when you read the narrative kind of with these fresh eyes, you're like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. How could at this age or in this timeline or in this so many years over this so many distances, this, and on top of that, the similarities throughout the realm. It's like, yes, there's some uniqueness depending on maybe where. But what is more is the similarities. And in that similarity, it's like what you once again mentioned in the beginning. It was a time of shalom. No other narrative that I've heard of speaks to this, what would we go, this time of peace that had to be there, that's being revealed or has been revealed to us, that shows us it's the Millennial Kingdom, where the bell gets rung. Like, that makes sense. Where would we have this similarity all over the world, and then this falling out and erasing of history all over the world? And no other people can talk Tartaria, but that's what we could say is more Asia. Attributed some greater parts. I mean, when you look at Russia compared to Europe's small. It's literally like where they drew a line through Russia to call that Europe. It's really imaginary. They should just call it all Asia. It's one land mass, right? But anyways, there's another arbitrary division, unless someone knows it, in theory or whatever. What's behind that? But so what we see is the Millennial Kingdom coming through with all this similarity, uniform throughout this flat motionless plane. And that has not been, let's say, it's been pointed out by many people, but no one's attributed it to this. Not many have attributed it to this time of peace, that there had to be a time of peace. And we see this all over the place. I've talked about it here in Hawaii. You can see it in other places where would they have had the time in the narrative to build such a beautiful structure. Forget that it was just horse, buggy, and wagons. Weren't they supposedly at war during this time or that time?
Yeah.
So
There was a lot.
this
Yeah.
goes in with it. So it's like, nah, that wasn't happening. Again, most of this thing we would go, there was a time of peace. And we realize in the history that's not true once again. So it doesn't match up. And how, yeah, so please share.
Well, yeah, there was a couple of things I wanted to quickly touch on. One is that keep in mind with Michelangelo's David, one of the things I was kind of getting at there is that the narrative has Michelangelo was the third person they attribute to working on it. The first person who worked on this big slab of stone was Donatello's students. And, he wasn't capable of doing it. But it's kind of interesting because I had stressed, like, we really, like, we just are, there's a statue of this dude we are told is David. And they just say, well, a few people worked on it, but one of them, the guy who mastered it was, Michelangelo. We really don't know. But the other thing I really wanted to point out is because I think you had, Michael, you had been talking about the building stuff. When we went to France, when we were staying in France, when we first arrived at Paris, Notre Dame had burned down about 2 weeks prior. Like, we just missed it. And so we saw all, like, the police tape was there. It was all fresh, and people were standing around it, and investigators were there and everything. And I think the official narrative has Notre Dame originally being built over like 4 or 5 years, which is ridiculous. Like 4 or 5 years it took to build it. So now we have just the roof that has burned down, and there's a little bit more fire damage than that. But they're saying now it's going to take 20 years just to repair the roof. Like how in the world, with our cranes and everything we've got, does it take 20 years? And I think they're just trying to figure out how are they even going to do it. Like, how are they going to replicate this roof and everything they did? Like, they're going to have to figure all that out. I really think it's going to be 20 years. There's some news media that are saying it's going to be like 4 or 5 years, but it's not. Like, that thing is not going to be restored in 4 or 5 years. It's going to be like my wife is going into her second trimester with a child right now. We will be marrying that child off before they finish Notre Dame. That's how long it's going to take. And it should. I mean, people need to wrestle with that cognitive dissonance to say, like, how in the world are we so advanced today, but we can't build something like Notre Dame in the time period, in the time that the historical documents, mind you, that's the thing. It's not that they're making up those numbers. The historical documents say that.
Cognitive dissonance wins the day.
Yeah, don't let cognitive dissonance win the day. Absolutely.
Hello, Noel, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Hi, this is Brian, and I'm new in the group and also kind of new to Millennial Kingdom, but I mean, the last year I've noticed a lot, and I think your presentation was really good. I think Medici, I think that's how I heard it pronounced, is a great place to look, maybe where the kingdom ended, and then the Renaissance, which is like French for rebirth, potentially being like there's the rebirth of Satan, like they knew he was coming back, and just all the coincidences around 1492 and Columbus and the Inquisition and stuff. So I think they got the Freemasonry. The Freemasons, they got Freemasonry from these existing buildings and just inhabited them.
Right. So those are some really great points you made. So let me just cover those really quickly. The Enlightenment bothered me when I became a flat earthist. And back in 2015ish, 2016, in there, one of the things I really felt called to start looking into was the ancient mystery religions and trying to figure out how the mystery religions, the Babylonian, the Eleusinian, the mysteries of Isis, the Bacchic mysteries, the Druidic, so on and so forth, how they're all related and how they created these so-called realities around us today, one of which is space and other things like that. Well, I started really honing in on the Renaissance. And in fact, one of the reasons that prompted me to go to Europe to spend a year there was just to study the buildings. This is before mud flood research. If my wife, Sarah, we were sitting down watching a mud flood documentary last night, and she was just kicking herself. She was like, if only we'd known this when we gone to Europe. But I went there to study the buildings and try to figure out what's going on in the Renaissance, because it really bothered me, because even then I saw it as inverted. I saw that what was really going on in the Renaissance, this age of enlightenment, was actually the enlightenment of Satan, and how the occult was apparently blending, Christianity with like pagan culture and putting them together, bringing out the mysteries and packaging it and selling it to Christianity. That always bothered me. But now that I'm looking into the Millennial Kingdom, it makes a lot more sense. And I'm seeing that this age of enlightenment is again, an esoteric language of inversion, where there was actually a rebellion against the kingdom. And to the kingdom, this is like, we're entering dark times. They're saying, no, we're coming out of the dark age and coming to the light, right? And so, when we see the... and I would be curious, Mike, if you want to talk about this a little bit of Hawaii. You were telling me the story a few weeks back about Hawaii, and I think you should repeat that. It was really good. Let me finish this, though. When you look at like the Spanish...
People think we're going into dark, and we're like, no, we're coming out of it.
Yeah, so... Let me just say here, like when you look at the Spanish coming over to America, the whole Columbus story is, created, of course. But I am really interested in this idea of all the Spanish coming over and the genocide. They were just massacring everybody. And I'm like, what if something like this did happen, and this was actually evil people just coming over and just trying to wipe out what was ever, trying to persecute whatever was here in the kingdom, like in North America, just wiping people out. There's so much that's going on there. But then you look at like the American Revolution. Now, again, I have no reason to believe the American Revolution ever happens. In fact, the more I look at it, I see it so coded and symbolic, esoteric. The 13 colonies, and George Washington being like Jesus, and all these different things, and Mary, his wife, and it's really interesting. But 1776 was like the birth of the Illuminati. I think something really did happen around that time, before the mud flood, when people were like, you have the occult is underground, and they're coming out in the open now. Like, they've got all their symbols everywhere, and they're like, we're coming out from under the rocks, dude. We're coming up into the light. And they started forming their societies and their governments, and something big. I think there was a huge rebellion against the kingship, and I haven't put it all together there, but you see the pieces there. They are there. And even without the Millennial Kingdom, it's still the same story. Like, it's all the beast government, right? Like, it's people need to get out of this mindset of like, God and country, and this was a Christian country. It's like, no, it wasn't. Like, this was not. This was, according to the official narrative, America was like the Great Atlantis, rediscovery, the experiment. It was not. Like, the founding fathers did not love the Most High. I even before I got into this, I was like, I couldn't accept that from when people would talk like that. But anyways, Mike, I would be interested to hear. Mike he's coming to us from the island of Molokai, and he can see Maui from his mountain abode there that he lives on. But you were telling me about like
I'm blessed. If it was clear, I'd see the Big Island too. I see Lanai also, and Maui. I just got to walk right here. Yeah. So interesting you bring this up, because where I look out over is kind of like, if we had to say in the water, yeah, I would say it's the opposite of the Bermuda Triangle. There's something special over here. in this land and in the water. Who knows? A magical kingdom. People used to talk about this being Lemuria, like the remnants, the tops of it. But what it all kind of showed at it showed us that that even maintained in the history times, what we were talking about earlier, times of peace, and when different people came in the migrations, different migrations here, and then what happened, whether they got along or overthrew the people that were here. And this is clear in the modern history. You can look it up. It's not in dispute in terms of when in the narrative the people came and what happened. But what was interesting about it is always what was the belief before. And this is what's the thing that gets covered up across the earth and gets muddled. Because what you do find out is at this time there seemed to be a war on the people. And if we remember invasion, different people came and overthrew whether the people who were there. And so what I'm getting at is other places where this happened, they called it like war or the modern war like we have in Europe in this narrative. But what we know, or the Civil War, what you're talking about, and then when we really look at that history, how much of it like doesn't make sense. Someone was sharing in one of the rooms has maybe I could share the link about the photos that we do see of the Civil War, how fake and staged, and the narrative doesn't fit, the dialogue doesn't fit the photos, and how much of this was a stage. And this is what I'm getting at. Even in any war that we know is a stage, even if they pick the sides, who is usually the victim in any war? It's the people. It's the innocent bystanders. So they can always know that, hey, we're going to have war games over here, and we're going to send our, programmed soldiers to fight these other guys because we're saying it. Whether that part is so much true that they're actually battling or not, we know sometimes they were. But what is usually is the casualties of war. And that's what it was always about. This is what's always been in all sorts of wars or invasions. We keep forgetting. We always put it into political. And we always forget what most wars are always about. It's about killing the people. It's about the people in general and overthrowing them. But always the way it's presented to us, it's always about political and the bigger powers, but it's never about what happened to the people. Most people who die in war weren't fighting. They were what we call the innocent bystanders, whether they knew something was going on or not. And this is where we say innocent bystanders. This has always been the target, right? This is the other part of the inversion, innocent bystanders, when no, you were always at war with the people. That is Hasatan's motive. And so what are wars for? We put it into this innocent, not innocent, but naive thing. It was these people fighting these people, or these people coming and taking over these people, and then recognizing all these evil people, yeah, we're working for Hasatan. Whether you recognize it or not, whether you think they went right to him and got their orders directly, they were under his spirit. That's why this happens.
Now, Mike, you were telling me earlier though that on the island of Molokai, that either was it your grandmother or some of the locals were talking about. Well, you're from Massachusetts, wasn't your? It was somebody that some of the locals were talking about how not long ago, within hundreds of years, that there was like this kind of like shalom there, and they worshipped the Most High. But then other people came and forced them to worship other gods. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yes, and this is in a book, and I recommend it. Look it up. It's called "The Perpetuated in Righteousness of Jesus Christ," and it's written by Hawaiians. And Google it, see if you can find it. It's a small book, and this was the best concise history that I've actually heard. And when I read it, I mean, it was like I was looking at Hawaiians, going, "Have you guys read this? Have you guys read this? Because this is written by Hawaiians who went, and then what it shows is, yeah, and it's known in the history. Pa'au, he came from Tahiti. He was the last one who came and brought in the Kapu gods and threw and went all over the islands and conquered the islands and killed anyone who believed in the one true God. Yeah. And that's why, and what these guys did in their research, they realized, hey, what was this? And what some will say they call it Keakua. They went back going, why do we have this belief? And a lot of times they didn't have a name for him. And owl is the eagle that flies, or the hawk is the bird that flies the highest here. So they kind of weren't calling it this, but that was the symbol of the Most High, because it was the Most High thing. Because otherwise his name was, what do you want to call it? Not taboo. This is what happened afterwards. His name was, I want to say, more sacred, that it was not spoken. It was understood. I don't know. But this is what it was covered up. Because as what we're revealing, no, we have a personal relationship. We know his name. We knew his name. And what they found out is how this got covered up. That all this records, all of this was smashed. And they were finding remnants of it and wondering themselves. This is Hawaiians doing this research. Kanaka Maoli, native from here. And then they share this history and they go, okay. And what they brought forward also is, you can look what was here. What the Hawaiians had built here. Some of it's without so-called modern technology that has not been duplicated anywhere else in the world. And again, this goes to, and one of the things where I live, and it's kind of known, this island's never been conquered. This one. Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Usually I don't like to even speak where I stand. But again, this island, once again, has always been sovereign. It's one of the last holdouts, and true, even kind of to today. Just ask a local. But what it goes to, a very spiritual place. Again, when one of the times they tried to conquer it, the people went up on the mountain and chanted, and you couldn't. A big storm came and knocked them out. And so these heiaus that we have here, what they've done in modern times, again, there was like, oh, this is where they used to sacrifice humans. And you're like, really? When did they start doing that? Because if this was here before, no, I don't know. I think if they were killing people, they wouldn't be planting. You wouldn't see this. And then you go in the history and you go, yes, it was these times of peace. But once again, and we believed in the one true God. So and in this book, they say, yeah, they show the similarity between the Polynesian and Hawaiian language and Hebrew, to go and show in this book, they show the migration to here through out of where we want to say modern Israel, or if that is the case over there, but they show this connection. And again, they have a very, one of the things they have a oral history that, again, many times got lost because a lot of the people got killed off. And this is like with most histories, all you had to do was take out one generation, and then you can teach the next whatever you want. You can take them over. Yeah. And so we've seen this in many, many places where all of a sudden there's a flip in the narrative. We're like, oh, they were just primitive before. They believed in something. Well, they believed in this multiple gods. So this is where I say it was all getting muddied. But then and it goes into this primitive narrative. But then we see, not just here where we didn't have those buildings to look at to go, wait a second, this building doesn't fit the Civil War cowboys time horse and buggy that America just blows that narrative out the water, that you see it here in other ways to go, okay, when was there a peacetime here? And that was my question. When was there a peacetime here for this stuff to get built? Because you don't build this when most of our history that we've been fed to us, man, you can probably track a war straight back. They've always been That's the enemy's thing. They've always been at war, and now the modern one is to hide it,
Right.
in the name of for your good. So we see this here, and this is what for many of us come together to point at this era of peace, one true God, and then to go, wow, was Millennial Kingdom everywhere? It makes sense to me, that personal relationship. So when people talk, I'll bring it to this. So when people talk about maybe Yahusha, there was records of him going all over the world, like, hey, he was in Japan, hey, he was in India, hey, he was maybe here, he was there. Maybe during the Millennial Kingdom, he walked the whole place.
Yeah, and you hit it there when you said that it only takes a generation to indoctrinate, basically change someone's memories or whatever. And it seems like the continent that got hit the hardest is Australia. And I've talked to some people there who said that, like, obviously we know, like, the narrative of the prisoners, the British colony bringing the prisoners over, but with the Aborigines there, even they don't have a history. Like what I've been. Now, I'm not an expert on this. This is just what I'm hearing, that they call it like the dream state or whatever, that very recently, like even according to the Aborigines, like there's no history. There's nothing. Like that country got wiped clean. Even to the point where, they rediscovered it, like, in like the 1800s or whatever, like that, which I find that whole thing, pretty bogus, just like the discovery of Antarctica. But anyways, does anyone else have any?
People are doing now, there's some videos out there about mud flood or Tartaria, Australia, showing like, okay, we're seeing evidence now. We're seeing this remnant like in America more. So places where we're like, nah, it wasn't there. Like someone in our group here has shown buildings in Hawaii going, this wasn't built when they said it was. Like right. The Capitol over in Oahu.
I'm so excited right now that my wife Sarah is really into, like she is sold on mud flood Millennial Kingdom research. She's looking into this, and like we were sitting on the couch last night watching a documentary on it, and it was someone made a comment in there about how they, and I had said this earlier tonight, that if you see like classical literature or neoclassical or Gothic revival or whatever, they say, oh yeah, like that wasn't really built during the Gothic period or the Roman period. It's revival because it doesn't fit with the narrative, right? Because we can't have that in America. Clearly in America, people were not here during the Middle Ages or whatever, and I just said last night, like, I can't believe that I fell for that. It's just like evolution, guys. It's just like how they train us to believe in the billions of years of evolution, and with their silly charts and all that stuff. And it's like, oh my goodness, I fell for it. No, it's right now, like next week's paper episode, it's going to be epic. I'm going to be talking about the Chicago World Fair, the Columbus Exposition of 1893. I know a lot of people have covered this. I know some of you probably have heard it before. I'm going to be talking, it's going to be epic though. I'm going to be talking about stuff that nobody else has covered, I don't think. I can't say that with assurance, but one of the things that struck me as I'm researching it this week is that there were two developers. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I'm going to get this right. Okay. So one of the main the World Columbian Exposition architect, the main guy, his name is Daniel Burnham. All right. Interestingly enough, this Daniel Burnham is related to H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes, this is a side note, I'll be talking about this next week. H.H. Holmes is America's, bunny ear quote right here. I'm not putting up gang signs or Illuminati stuff or any of that, but he is listed as America's first serial killer, and it's all a hoax. It's so I'm going to take you guys through this and show how ridiculous this guy is. But he apparently killed up to 250 people in the streets of Chicago during the World Fair. And keep in mind, this is all psychodrama. This is they're trying to be, the tens of millions of people that went to this World Fair. They're reading this in the papers, going, "This could have been me. I could have been that, that helpless victim, right? Like it's psychodrama, right? Well, this guy who's the main architect developer, he's overseeing the entire Chicago World Fair. There was originally 2 of them. And so I just gave his name. Let me pull it up again. Daniel Burnham. He wants to design the World Fair in the, classical Roman style, right? Well, this is just like the Apollo missions. Remember that guy who burned up on the tarmac? This other guy says, no, I want to do the World Fair with modern buildings. And guess what, guys? He mysteriously died. It was like a type of, it was like a murder. Like he mysteriously died. And they're like, oh, nope, we're going with the classical, like architecture. That's all, it's all like just, like, what was it, paper mache or whatever they say that they used to build it with. Except for the 2 buildings that conveniently did not burn down in the fire that are still there in Chicago to this day that you can go see, and they're magnificent buildings. Anyways, anybody else have anything?
Hey, Can I jump in? Oh, God.
Oh,
somebody.
I appreciate it. If you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Cool. Another term that I hear thrown around attributed to buildings in America is neoclassical, because it couldn't just be classical, but it's neoclassical, because that doesn't fit in with the narrative. But I just wanted to say, in regards to a topic that was previously brought up, I really, really appreciate your boldness and your commitment to the truth, no matter how taboo the subjects can be. Just because with my personal testimony before I came to Torah, it was a year ago prior that I purchased Michael Hoffman's Judaism Strange Gods. And it was just kind of through that angle of understanding the unignorable fact of what you were saying about, you can use a lot of different ways to describe it. You could say Ashkenazi or Edomite takeover or over-representation or whatever in so many numerous psyops. And just the McGraw-Hill like history books that, I was brought up to learn from in school. But like, from, what happened in 1940, whatever, to 9/11 and so many other instances, it's something that can't be ignored, and you almost feel like crazy for being one of the only ones to admit it or talk about it. So when I hear another person, especially someone that in Torah that believes in Messiah and everything else, willing to also say these things, it's just so reaffirming and yeah, very, very impactful for me and my wife. Just coming from our own testimony of how we came to the truth. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, and I'm right behind you on everything you said on the matter. I don't think I need to add anything. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And one of the things at the Unexpected Cosmology that I do expect of the administrators or anyone who comes here is, well, a couple things. One thing I want to stress is that I feel very, very, very uncomfortable asking for money. I don't ask for money, and I've been doing this. I've been plugging away at this for several years now. Taking up my time is taken up all the time just trying to research and write this stuff. And the reason I don't is because I have found that when ministries use money, when they bring in money, they are then giving truth to the people who are purchasing that truth. Like there are certain things they cannot say. They have to hold back from, and the truth is compromised in a lot of different areas. And so people have tried to come at me in any number of ways and try to kind of get me to stop doing what I'm doing, but they can't, because they can't pinch my pockets. Like, it doesn't matter if I have like 100,000 followers and then they remove them and I have one follower. I'm still going to keep doing what I do to that one follower. So I'm not in a position where I have to worry about, I'm upsetting that person and he gives me my money every week that that pays for the dentist and the car payments and that kind of stuff. So a lot of ministries do fall into that, and I do appreciate that. Where the spot I've gotten into is it hasn't been easy, and it's taken many years to get here. And I used to look at guys who looked into serpent seed and the Ashkenazi, the Edomites, that kind of stuff, and think these guys are just sleazy people, so no, I do appreciate that very much. Oh, and I wanted to say, I was talking about the administrators here, is that what I want. Everybody knows that my mission or my statement, my kind of my doctrine here is Revelation 14:12. I love Revelation 14:12 because it tells us who is written in the book of life, also who Satan is actually at war with. It's those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahushua. And so what I've tried to foster here at the Unexpected Cosmology is a place where we can touch on all these different issues. I mean, we could talk, last week's talk was on inversion of male and female, androgyny, and how rampant that is in society. I mean, that's a issue that nobody wants to touch. But what I want people to feel secure coming here is that we're not going to bend on who Yahushua is as Messiah and our Father's commands. I want people to feel secure here, knowing that they can research all these other things, and that we will not be leading away from that. I mean, I put my foot down on that, and I know there's all was it Caesar's Messiah and all that research out there. The fact of the matter is that I am content, and Yahuwah has shown this. He has shown himself to be true, his word to be true, and the testimony of Yahushua to be true. So I'm just not going to bend on those. So anyways, I just want everyone to feel secure here that we can go and touch on a lot of these subjects that nobody else wants to touch. And you guys can feel secure that I'm not going to lead you away from either the Messiah or our Father's commands. So thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Can I
no.
jump in real quick? Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead.
I really did want to go with androgyny. I want to go there. I was just curious. You mentioned Da Vinci, and I think everybody's kind of heard that painting that he did. Obviously he's from the same area, that same supposed time frame.
Yeah.
Mona Lisa was like a dude wearing chicks' clothing. I'm just curious if, in your research on this or any other art, that you had actually seen androgyny being pushed on people from this perspective as opposed to what we see now.
I see that Lisa really wants to jump in on this. She is aching to jump in. Let me just say before, and I'm going to hand it over. Well, let's do this. Yeah, we'll have Lisa address that, but let me, and then we'll have what Rob wants to say. I will say this on the Mona Lisa, okay? I have not done the research that Lisa has done. All right, that's why I actually asked her to come on after I gave my spiel on Marilyn Monroe last week and kind of to give her research. Now, I'm not at the place where Lisa is. I have not done the research on this. I come from a different perspective, but I also acknowledge that different perspective probably is just because I haven't done the amount of research she has done on this, right? Now, when it comes to the Mona Lisa, I will say this. I did see the Mona Lisa in person at the Louvre, and it has to be one of the most disappointing art pieces that I have ever seen in my life, because they always make it look really big, and you go there and you stand in this ridiculously long Disneyland line, like 5 hours stretching. We got there at opening. We ran straight to the Mona Lisa because we knew that was where the line was. So we only had like 100 people in front of us who rushed, like the Black Friday rush. And we get there, and it's the size, like it's the size of a dinner plate. Like you could literally eat off the Mona Lisa with like put your peas and your hamburger steak on there or whatever. Like it's that small. And anyways, that's my only commentary on the Mona Lisa. I have never looked into. I get what you're saying. Is it a male? I don't know. So anyways, Lisa, take it away. I hear you aching to come on.
It was one of the topics I wish I would have, like I said, I had so many thoughts in my head. I could only say so many things the other day, or last week. But yeah, the Mona Lisa, the speculation is that it's actually, because it's always about the sly smile, right? So the speculation is that it's actually a self-portrait of Da Vinci as a woman. Or who knows if Da Vinci wasn't really a woman anyways. I mean, I don't know. But so it's funny that Noel is saying that, they've created this big hubbub over it, and it's a big disappointment. I mean, isn't that how they do everything, Like, oh, look over here. And, any big news story that they're shoving down your throat for weeks on end usually ends up to be a hoax. But the real news stories are all buried. But that's just parallel idea.
Was that all you wanted to say, Lisa? Rob, you wanted...
I mean, about that, I know you weren't really covering that topic tonight, and he mentioned it, so I just thought I would say what I had heard. It's speculation that it's a self-portrait of Da Vinci as a woman. So there's your androgyny or your trans idea that they're shining a big spotlight on for you, right?
Okay. Rob, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I just want to support and say that I appreciate the exploration and research that you do and share. And I, like others on here, like to explore those things. And not to say we know it or we're exposing it, but it's exposing the research of it at least and exploring these topics out for we can see truth in them and deception in them. So I just appreciate that, and that we're able to go there and feel at peace with it, and we all are in good harmony on that, and not more or less arguing and so forth. No dissension and all that stuff. It's just a great exploration of these topics in a safe environment, so to speak, and doing it in love. So I appreciate it.
All right, excellent. Is it Larry Liberty? We're talking androgyny. It's somebody referring it is not Lady Liberty, Larry Liberty.
Well, the Statue of Liberty, if you look at it, is just Apollo in a dress. I mean, if you look at the statues they've done of Apollo, it's the same exact face.
I agree with that. Yes, the Statue of Liberty is a dude. Yeah.
Did you get a lot of flack or unsubscribers after last week, Noel?
No, actually, I have to look on that specific channel, but that actual video, because you'll see like if somebody likes or dislikes subscribes based on a video, and but I'd have to check. So, but I will say with what Rob is saying, I actually really enjoy the community here at the Unexpected Cosmology in Discord. When Dave, I refer to him as like my my producer. He hates that, I think. But when Dave first contacted me, I don't know when it was. Dave, do you remember? It was like April, maybe May of 2020 or something like that. And he's like, he's trying to, like, I'll build you a website, all this kind of stuff, and and I didn't think Dave was going to be around that long. But one of the things he was really pushing from almost day one was you need to start a Discord channel. And I'm like, really? Like a Discord? Like, and so when we finally launched this thing, I think it was October of 2020. I did. So it's only been 14 months now. I did not think it would last a year. I really didn't. I thought it would fizzle out in the spring. I gave it, 6 months tops. It was going to fizzle out, and it is really it's really fun. I mean, just coming on here, I see ding, 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 and people are commenting all day and putting different stuff on. And guys, sometimes I can't come on. Some days I see what you're saying. Like I have the screen open, but I got all my work I got to get done. Or else, I can't get it done if I go and comment. But I'm loving this community. I'm loving the people coming in here, and we are a Torah-based community. But we have noticed that because of the Millennial Kingdom research, which is really exciting, there's a lot of people coming over here who don't know anything about Torah. Like they don't even know that's a thing. Like what? I thought it was done away with, right? They've never heard anybody in their life say that the Torah is eternal, that it's, Sabbath is Saturday, all that kind of stuff. So they're coming over here, and I think it's great that what the Millennial Kingdom is, it's the gospel of the kingdom, right? And we are giving people the gospel of the kingdom and able to, we're basically in a way be able to start fresh from all the indoctrination that people have read about in the Bible. And so it's I've encountered more dispensationalists and other things in the last month or two, I think, over this issue. So I'm really excited from all the different people coming over. And the most important thing here is what I'm stressing with the Millennial Kingdom is, guys, the reason it fell was because people were not obedient, because they did away with the law. They rebelled against the ordinances of the kingdom, right? So that's, really what I want to keep stressing to people as they come over. All right. Anyways, Lisa, I know you wanted to say something else. I know you wanted to say something else on androgyny.
No, not necessarily. I was just
okay, because the way you jumped in there so quickly, I'm like. All
like
right.
I said, it was one of those things that crossed my mind after we were done, and I was like, oh, that would have been a good one to mention, So it's funny that somebody brought it up right now, and then I just looked it up and I posted this right here. It literally is a topic somebody's discussed before. Italy Magazine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a heavy subject. It's a hard subject. I just kind of fell into it because when I was on Facebook, there's all these videos were coming out, and it was something that at first I just was like, what? And like I was saying before, there are some people that to me were very obvious, but I certainly wasn't expecting to find what I found. And so it just kind of turned into this, just challenging my own, like we've been trained to not believe our own eyes, right? People don't believe their own eyes about the earth, and now we don't believe our own eyes about what a person looks like, and now they're causing us to have reason to not believe our eyes, because they literally are messing with the structure of the human structure. So,
and what's interesting in this is the official numbers we get is it's still even though how much it is in the news, in the Hollywood, in the media, and it has been since when did it kind of be really okay? 80s, more into the 90s, into the 2000s, prepping the people or programming the people that, it's okay for gays, lesbians, this progressive type of programming that, all in the name of good, inclusiveness, loving everyone. But when you see the agenda behind it, it was more to attack on Yah and his people, his creation. And so what I was saying again, when we look at the numbers, again, it's a small percentage of the population who, let's just say, identify as not male or female. It's still a minority. And I'm not trying to disparage. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe that, once again, which we go to with the serpent seed, okay, maybe all those numbers are fabricated again. How many people are really here? How many people are, what's really going on in terms of, how many people now, let's say in the last 5 to 10 years, have been further programmed where this is even a bigger number in some ways. We know it is a bigger number in terms of people's thinking or belief system being okay with it, or going, yeah, it's being for it, and not even knowing the agenda behind it, and realizing that it's not good for anybody. And that where I was leading this to is, oh no, it slipped me. The numbers again, that it leads us into it just made me think how many Jewish people were in Europe at the time of, before World War II. It's the numbers are inflated in some ways, and then maybe in other ways made it look like a minority. Well, what I'm getting at is not like we're in the times of they live, where, the majority, we say serpent seed, but there's a bunch of reptilians or whatnot running around masquerading. It really leads to this way that you can see that maybe this was what we're seeing now. We already know this has been the agenda for a long time. We already know this technology has existed for a long time. We already know they could do this for a long time. And who's to say how much they really have been doing a lot of this stuff, and now it's just being revealed to us. So in many ways, this could be much more farther advanced than we even think of. And two, I heard it, just to bring humor to this, I heard this woman say, what you have to do if you want to date nowadays, the first question you need to ask, gentlemen, to any woman is, were you born a woman? Were you born female? And I was just like, wow, that's like, really? It's like, yeah, it's more widespread than you think. And it just got me thinking about how much, when we look at Hollywood royalty, serpent seed, how much this is attack them, like how much more widespread, what's really going out there. We see the behavior, we see how people have been, just look at how much I just say Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0 has been pushed. Now 3.0, because, you can have it in the metaverse, and that's already just, just this tech has been around since the 90s, 2000s. Maybe it wasn't as graphically enriched, but it's been there. So once again, even that one was brought out previously. A lot of this stuff I'm seeing today, I'm like, guys, this was some of us who are, been here. We're like, this ain't nothing new. If we know it ain't nothing new, how much has been going on? And this is where it goes to what you said earlier. This for me, I praise Yah, is again, we're moving not from light to dark, going into dark, but we're moving dark to light.
Yeah, there's a few things there I really want to touch on that were really good. One was serpent seed, but I really wanted to touch on Sodom and Gomorrah, where we're at today, and also the LGBTQ something or other plus, however many, whatever all they have in there now, all the letters XYZ movement, is that obviously Intel is really pushing homosexuality right now as part of the depopulation, right? They want to depopulate the earth. They want to make more people sterile, but also more people who can't reproduce. However, and I was talking with my wife Sarah about this recently, and we were discussing what's going around the jab in terms of Sodom and Gomorrah. And when you actually look at the narrative as told in Jasher and other accounts of Sodom, we see that it wasn't necessarily homosexuality per se that brought about Yahuwah's wrath. It was their treatment of people. And we know in Scripture that what is very personable to Yah is caring for the orphans, the widows, the poor. Those things are because he thinks in terms of family. father, mother, son. He wants us to take care of the widows, take care of our parents, take care of our children, orphans, children, so on and so forth. And so what we see in the Sodom and Gomorrah account is that they were the poor were being brutalized, and there were these laws that forced them to that beat them down, starve them, all these just terrible things. And we were wondering if what we're seeing now with the governments all over the world saying, if you don't take this, you can't have a job, you can't go to the grocery store, eat food, you can't go to the hospital, right? Like this is Sodom and Gomorrah behavior. It's, we think so little of humanity, we think so little of taking care of you, that we're going to, force you into, submission by our laws, that would actually bring about Yah's wrath. Kind of just an interesting thought. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was this goes in with the mud flood. What we're looking at is serpent seed and genealogies. Now, I don't know how many people picked up on this when I did my Millennial Kingdom mud flood and the Odes of Solomon presentation. I pointedly stated in there that it said in the Odes of Solomon that Yahushua, when he arrived, he destroyed the seed of Satan. All right, I want everyone to think about that. He destroyed the seed of Satan, and I backed that up with Second Baruch, the prophecy of the of Yahushua being the vine, and the vine goes through the forest and it destroys the entire forest and rips up all the trees of the enemy. And then the last tree is Satan, and he goes up to the tree and he destroys that tree, rips it up, right? And that's when Satan is thrown in prison. And those of Solomon is the same thing, only it's like a wheel that goes around and destroys everything. Same scene, I think. Well, obviously, it's just like Satan wasn't destroyed, and we see that the enemy was in the wastelands. I think that the seed of Satan, it was completely eliminated from the kingdom and destroyed in that sense, but there was a surviving remnant, I think, somehow, living under the rocks outside. Anyways, all that to say is because when we're looking at one of the reasons I keep pushing ahead with genealogies and I keep looking at them is because there is an esoteric truth to them. And when you're looking at all these celebrities, all these spooks are all related to each other. I mean, I don't know, like if you guys, I brought up H.H. Holmes earlier tonight, the America's Apparent First serial killer. And they were, of course, he was like a spin-off of the whole Jack the Ripper intel psyop they had going down in London at the same time. Jack the Ripper was just a few years before the Chicago World Fair. They decided to bring this guy out, H.H. Holmes. And there's a lot of articles right now that you can read where they're making a big deal how Meghan Markle is related to H.H. Holmes. I don't know why they're picking H.H. Holmes. Why, of all of her thousands of relatives, that they're saying, oh, wow, she's related to H.H. Holmes. It's like, well, why not just say she's related to Humphrey Bogart? Why not say she's related to Walt Disney? Why not say she's related to Princess Diana or Winston Churchill or, Charlie Chaplin or Marilyn Monroe, because they're all related. It's just weird. But all that being said, is I've started noticing some abnormalities. So there's something about, like, if you're like super royal in America, like think of like the most royal people you can think of. Who's the queen of comedy? Lucille Ball, right? Who's one of the greatest wizards of all time? Walt Disney. Okay, Lucille Ball, Walt Disney, also Humphrey Bogart was a big deal if you were alive in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. All three of those people are directly related to people, to witches from the Salem witch trials. Like, those are their grandparents and grandmothers, all right? I find the Salem witch trial to be a very important part of the genealogy of the sons of what I call the serpent seed, the sons of Cain. Another one that is very important that almost all spooks are funneled through are Magna Carta Sureties. When I did the Marilyn Monroe piece last week, I noted that I think she's related to about 16 Magna Carta Sureties. That's some serious inbreeding. Like, she's more royal than George H.W. Bush. Like, Marilyn Monroe should have ran for president. That's how royal she is. And so you see the Magna Carta Sureties, super important. Salem witch trial, very important, not as important. But also, here's a big one: Mayflower passengers. If you are directly descended, as in I'm talking grandparents, directly descended from someone who came over on the Mayflower, that's really, really important. You see I see these three common trends: Salem witch trial, Mayflower, Magna Carta. And I don't know what to make of that. I almost think that there's esoterically, in inversion, there's something going on there. The Magna Carta, maybe they were, signing into legislation, something to oppose the kingdom. And I actually wonder, maybe they were like divine in some way, like they weren't even real people, like their names are like by God, things like that, like really weird names that you don't even see real people have those names anymore. And then you see like the Salem witch trials, and like what was going on with the Mayflower coming. I have so many questions.
Conveniently, Salem, a good portion of it burnt down, which was, when you see some of the images, and again, they don't, this is where I'm from, they don't, you see it was another place that was already there. There was this, when I think about like where I grew up and where I was come, we see the old settlements that they show where the pilgrims, and if you're in Jamestown, you've seen how, what these buildings used to look like and stuff, and, more dilapidated style, not this, and then you see like you go and you, like where I grew up there, and you'd see it's kind of all run down and stuff. Then you see those pictures and you see some of these houses that have survived, and you're like, what about this place? When did they build this? How come nothing else? How come the mental asylum where I lived, one of the state loony bins was like the most ornate place on the hill overlooking the whole area. This is close to Salem. Probably was still part of Salem back in the day. You see, and this is what someone shared in a bunch of photos that, again, they're not publicized. Salem was well developed back in the day. We have this image, like I said, of dreary past, and it wasn't. And again, it didn't fit the narrative. Like, wow, wait a second, how did they have that architecture? How is all these really beautiful houses and buildings and neighborhoods? And, you had the parks with the, these, what do you call it? Who knows? Energy things, pavilions. Just these, why are these pavilions just to sit in? There was something else. And all burnt down at this time.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
something was going on there. Again, it was like, okay, they don't tell you how well developed this was. Again, this is going back into, I believe, Millennial Kingdom, or as people say, 3-month flood. And this history has been, conveniently whitewashed or covered over or burnt.
Well, it seems as though the witch trials happened right around the same time as the whole schism, as far as medical society healings. That they were trying to demonize people that were using herbs, right, and roots and actual natural things, and they're trying to shut that down because they were bringing in more of the whole pharmaceutical type of way. So they had to call them witches to get rid of them. So it goes hand in hand with what you're saying about, they're also burning down the places that were bringing healing as well, right?
Yeah, let me just say, because I really think, because I know that, like, as soon as you get to the mud flood, all of a sudden you say all of history is fake before that. I really think that the Salem witch trial, in some way or I don't know if the years are exact, if it happened in those years, but I think the Salem witch trial did happen, and I believe it was all a staged hoax. I don't believe that it was all a stage hoax. Like, it has, if the Salem
mongering too,
mongering, psychodrama.
Yeah. If it happened today, I think everyone in this room would go, yeah, that's a hoax. Like, that's not real. That's in the media. It was basically what we would call the equivalent of your media hoax in,
Weren't they like hanging people? How do you hoax that? I don't know.
Well, no, to keep in mind,
they did that.
they're reporting in the papers that people are being hung, right? You're reading in the papers that people are hung. Let me give you an example.
There is a place called Gallows Hill in Salem. I've been there. I've been there late at night too. I've seen some things and ran. And then I asked the history of it. So they do have, however much of this is the narrative that they give us, but there was at this time that at least we were told there was some hangings going on. There is some trees, that's still remnants of that, where you see the markings, like the whippings where they hang from. There's a couple well known in my town. We're like, yeah, that's connected to that. That tree still, there's like two. I don't know if they're still there. They were when I was younger. And Gallows Hill, half of it's developed. This side of it, the other half goes into a park. And, they have the signage there telling what used to take place down, supposedly, back in this day. But again, what was really happening, who was killing who, for what reasons, as we've known, that's been covered up. Again, with the Jesuits, for one, always coming up with some story or another.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's multiple hangings. Like okay, like I don't want to get off subject, just to show you how I believe easily they could hang people and it's a hoax. I believe that the Lincoln assassination was a hoax. All right, like the whole thing is so ridiculous. When you have John Wilkes Booth, he jumps down on the stage, he gives his speech. Lady Lincoln, Mary Todd Lincoln, waits for him to finish his speech to say, like, oh my God, they shot the president. She waits that long, and then he, runs off. And the Ford's Theater was only a third filled. I've seen the death mask. That's a proven hoax. But anyways,
it wasn't immediate. It was like all right. I mean, that's okay. Like a red flag right there.
Right. So when you see like the perpetrators, one of them, which Dr. Mudd, which he went to our favorite star Fort Jefferson, which is a ridiculous narrative that Fort Jefferson was built during the Civil War. Like, just telling you that it's like they put like this actor there in Fort Jefferson. It was all staged. But when they hung the perpetrators and they took that photo of them being hung, who was there in the audience but the Secret Service? It was all intel. The whole thing was intel. Probably everyone in Ford's Theater. It was only a third filled. Probably every single person in Ford's Theater was intel. But my point is that the paper I just wrote today on H.H. Holmes, which will be just a section of my presentation next week on the White City on Chicago. When H.H. Holmes, who apparently killed 250 people, though he was only tried for one person for killing his business partner, when he was hung, his request was that he was so afraid of people, he said, of people digging up his body to dissect his body, that his request was that he would be buried 10 feet down in cement. And we are told that he was buried down in an unmarked grave where nobody can find him. And you're like, see, there it is right there. Like, and then, of course, his house conveniently burned down within a month of his supposed death so that nobody could go in and find these apparent gas chambers where he was gassing women and strangling them. But the thing is, my point is that, like, you see right there, that's how easily they hoax these things.
All right, let's bring it to today. Let's bring it to where most of us were alive, and we don't. All right, I'm going there. I remember when Reagan got shot.
Hoax. Yeah, that was fake.
And ever since then, it was supposed to be, what was one of the biggest conspiracies growing up? Before all of, people, more of it, it was one of the well-known ones is every 20 years, the president gets shot. And he was like one of the first ones to live.
We all thought Trump something would happen to him, and he walked out of that administration somehow.
Yeah, again, it was supposed to happen again, like maybe the George W. Because it was or is it every 20 or every 40? I forget. But it was at every 20, I think. And so here we are again, like you said, hoax. I think that guy is gotten out or asking for parole. He's country music player, whoever the guy who supposedly shot Reagan. And
Oh yeah, he's related to all the same people too. Just so you know.
so yeah, so what I'm saying is here it is again in our modern times where we didn't have the Kennedy moment. It didn't take it to that level, but it was enough to, as you would say, sow the psyop in so many ways on the people by perpetuating these hoaxes, these stage events. That there's many different reasons for doing this to program the population, whether it's to demonize gun ownership or fear the lone gunman again, or whatever narrative they want to spin out of it. Again, I just said the key word, fear, to get the population to fear. That really seems to be, the modus operandi. Use whatever it is to control people through fear. And many of it, in this world, depending on where you are, or there's real things to be fearful of. Like I was saying, if you don't have maybe a roof over your head, or you live in a really not so nice place. But we go back to what is being revealed here through all of these lies. Is that not these lies reveal a system of control and a system of fear?
You know who else was apparently assassinated? What other president was McKinley? Okay, where was McKinley assassinated? At the Pan American Exposition, the World Fair in Buffalo in 1901. It was a psychodrama. They set up this World Fair, destroyed the city, and they assassinated a president at the World Fair.
You wrote about this, right?
Yeah, and I'll be talking about it in the future because I'm dusting off these old papers and adding to them. So I'll be covering Chicago next week and then the Pan American eventually. But yeah, like you look at like Reagan, like you look at his assassination attempt, and he was like, you look at how he recovered in the hospital, and how old was the guy? Like in his 70s, or like there's no way, But the other one was it Ford who it was Squeaky, the Manson girl, the redheaded Manson girl, Lynette, who happened to date the producer of The Doors in high school, and she knew everybody, and she was an actress, just so everyone knows. And of course, so basically everyone in the Manson family were like actors, but like they had to keep milking the Manson psyop, and so they had Squeaky go up to Ford, and she held a gun up to him, but it was like there was apparently no bullets in it, whatever, and it's just whatever. The whole thing was ridiculous too. But so that they didn't like assassinate Ford, but they used an actor to pretend to potentially assassinate him, which was kind of a weird twist in that whole genre. I really thought, I think we all did. We really thought like they were going to off Trump, like somehow, like he was going to be lying in a casket at some point, and I'm really surprised they maybe they realized that we
survived many attempts. They don't publicize it. They never really did, and the reason why is they said, what good would it do if it's true? And and now again, if evil's in control, we know they would use that any which way. They would pump it out there. Attempts were made on his life and stuff. But what I have heard in some places that yes, they were. And one of those things, remember in Hawaii, the so-called missile drill. Somebody had mentioned that a couple weeks ago. Did I remember that? Yes, I did. And I just told you my phone wasn't smart enough, so I didn't get the alert, and I didn't have a TV. So I didn't know about it. But what I had heard down the line afterwards, somebody mentioned that was actually an attack on Air Force One, or possibly, and that it was real and it was diverted, and this was the this was the excuse they used. It was such a joke here, but it was pumped out. I mean, it really in like certain places in the islands, people took it for real, and it was put out there for a moment as being real. And so, but it was funny that one of the reasons I heard, and if we want to talk conspiracy, was there was something behind it, and it was an attempt on Trump. And I went, wow, yeah, well, this is, it wouldn't put it by me. We hear stranger things in this mixed up world nowadays. That, like we said, man, I think where we go with many of this is, and this is why I say, what's next? What's next because in one way, the people who are already programmed in some ways are already programmed. They don't need to, they're entranced. How do they entrance the rest? Somebody put it, I don't know if it was in one of the groups, and it was like 30% are, let's say, we'll just use these words, mind control. They're mind controlled. 30% can't be mind controlled, or they've broken free of the mind control and they're not. And there's 40% in the middle, and they could go either way. And if they don't hear someone say something over here like, hey, that doesn't make sense. We don't even have to say, hey, do you believe in the Millennial Kingdom, or you think it happened yet? You can start with, that doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah, it doesn't. So these guys in the middle, they just need to all really, like some of us, is just question it. Because the guys who are already programmed, man, it's like, okay, what can I say to you? Nothing. Got it. Yah have mercy on you. So these others really in between. So when I look at it, again, I was speaking with it. I don't think it's going to take much more, or what I'm saying, these 40%, whatever lie, and you can see the lies are getting worse. It's like, do you see through it? It's like, okay, guys, it seems like they keep coming out with bigger and bigger lies, and some people still haven't seen through it or, come awake. So I think in some ways, this is where we say, it's almost like if an Antichrist appears on the scene, like he's the good guy, he's the hero, I think, again, a sizable population will buy it, already those mind control, or part of, the seed of Satan. And these other ones who haven't seen it yet, for us, I think it's going to be so laughable. I think it's going to be laughable, these lies. I don't think, if you're in fear, it's going to be something to further fear. But if you're not in fear, I think the next is going to be lies. It's going to be such big lies that it's going to be laughable.
It already is. It's already. I mean, it's. Unfortunately, our current reality would be it would be a comedy if it wasn't such a tragedy, because it is a farce, right? Like, we've been talking in this group about, like, I mean, it's terrible, right? Like, I'm not laughing at this, but how they're pushing off now, how, like, heart, was it like heart palpitations is normal now in children, or that, it's just to be expected now, or how global warming is responsible for heart attacks, or like being pushed through, like
climate change is responsible for miscarriage,
or the fact that Omicron, amazingly, it's hard to find because it resembles the common cold, and it's like it's hard to in the symptoms. It's like the same thing, and it's just in
the South African president. I can't believe they put it out there, but it is out there. Says this is going to kill all the other viruses because it's mutated, and then like the common cold will all have herd immunity basically, and it's gone. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
And the other side is it's going to kill you all and you need another vaccine. You need the booster. You need the booster.
And yeah, so just the narrative out there now is just such a farce. And I mean, it's just like you're saying. We're sitting back and going, how can anyone take this dribble any longer? And people are just eating it up. You know, a certain segment of the population just eating it up, and it's unbelievable.
So I remember when people used to make fun of me years ago. All you had to do was say flat Earth. You didn't have to say whether you believed in it or not. All you had to do was bring it up, and you were basically attacked and scolded, made fun of. And I'm like, isn't it interesting? Because it shows you now, even things we say now, how people will respond to us. I said, what's really interesting is, that when I look at it sometimes, and I know not to engage now, that it's like, wow, okay. It's like when you see those memes where when you're agreeing with the government, you're not the, what do we call it? The opposition or so you have all these people that who still kind of go with it, or just going lockstep. Like, since when did you believe everything the government and the media and everything you say? And if we say anything alternative, so many people who we would consider alternative, or at least not part of the mainstream, you see how those who are still leaning that way, they really, it seems like it doesn't matter what topic it is. This is, if it doesn't fit, it's like, when did this official narrative? It's like, if you bring up a certain thing outside of what is considered, we're going over, for Thanksgiving, don't talk about politics or this or that. Don't talk about football, whatever. It seems like, when did this become the status quo? And so many people are really holding on to that other narrative and not even entertaining anybody else's difference of opinion. Remember, it used to be, do you believe in aliens or not? And you would get ridiculed, or at least people would go, I don't know. So it's quite interesting that the more closer we get to the truth, you see that either people are going to at least listen to the research, or those who are still just ridiculing. And I think that's part of the, man, you need mercy.
Well, guys, it's getting close to that time, and I would like stay on here longer if anybody has anything they want to talk about. Now would be a good time to ask any questions, clarifications, anything like that. Nope.
There was a speculative news story that supposedly the quote-unquote Pope is dying. Has anybody heard anything more or different? And supposedly, according to the
I heard he's been gone for a while.
He's supposed to be the last one, so I don't know.
Yeah. So I heard he's been gone for a while. So it's kind of funny, like the Queen. It's like when they were waiting to, it's kind of like pre-programming us again for that. And if he's like you said, supposedly the last Pope, if it wasn't the last one, that if this is true, it's like, hey guys, I'm like, this is celebration time. I'm like, if this is end time, like we were saying earlier, this is, when you look at it, this is, if one way is just a representation of evil, one of the representations of evil on this earth, and we know that the enemy is defeated. Okay, so what comes after that? This is showing us that evil is getting, I think, poured in the lake of fire.
Yeah, that I still think there's going to be a total of 6 boosters, or 6 in total from the shot through the boosters. I think we're only on 4.
No, Israel's up to 4 or 5 now.
Well, we're seeing 4 pushed all over the world. Israel might be the 5th now. They've been advanced beyond everyone else, so I'm not sure where they're.
Well, if we look at the so-called timeline, they want to do it every 3 months. So, and then one of them said you need 3, and then we got it. I think one of the companies even came out with that. We got the one for the Omni, but you're going to need 3 of ours to get 3 boosters of ours to cover that one. So we can see it's already in the future. Your number.
Then again, I could be wrong on the 6, and it could go on just indefinitely forever. On the 2030 boosters. Just who knows? But how long they're going to pump this thing out? But
well, how many updates do you need on your Microsoft software?
A lot. All those viruses. 666 boosters. That's terrible, but yeah, I don't think I mean, if people are recognizable as anyway human by that point, I don't know if that's possible. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign out tonight. I love talking to you guys. Love hearing you guys talk, and I'm really appreciative of everyone in this community. It's been really a good community. There's been a lot of new people coming in. I encourage everyone to just take part in this community, and there's a lot of quiet people who read, and I understand that. Have fun talking through the rest of the night. I hear that Lisa, you and Mike and a few others were talking for like 4 or 5 hours the other night, so party hard, have fun, and I'll see you guys around. Shalom, everybody.